Hello everyone, welcome back to Sports Today. Well, we've just witnessed a pretty good match in the T20 World Cup between England and New Zealand, and of course the match ends in favor of England. So if you are one of those who was backing England to actually go the distance, as I have done previously, you'd be actually vindicated by that particular result. For New Zealand, however, the loss, while obviously is not ideal, doesn't actually do much to dent their chances of making it to the semi-final. So, quick summary of the match before we actually get into discussing the permutations, combinations, and of course the fallout from what this particular result would be. Remember, England had opted to bat first, having won the toss, and they actually set New Zealand a pretty good target, 179 for 6 in their 20 overs, thanks in no small part to half centuries from both Jos Buttler and Alex Hales. Now, Buttler, of course, was the star of the show, 73 of 47 balls at a strike rate of over 155. Finally, England's captain has come to the party in the T20 World Cup, and he did it in a match where they knew full well they had to win. Otherwise, a loss here would have all but seen them out of the tournament. Alex Hales, remember, he only ended up getting a recall to the side just before the T20 World Cup. He hadn't been in the scheme of things. He too has been hit and miss in recent times, but good half century there along with his skipper. Of course, the middle order did kind of, in fact, underwhelm a tad, but the good news was that the top two batsmen put on so many runs that they still ended up at 179, and that was always going to be a stiff target for the New Zealanders. They didn't start too well. Both of their openers, ended up going pretty cheaply. You had Devon Conway was dismissed in the first over itself. Then you had Finn Allen, who could only make 16 of 11, only had 1-6 during his time at the crease. Kane Williamson doing Kane Williamson things. He hit 40 runs, but he took 40 balls to get there. So that's a strike rate of 100, which, to be fair, is great if you're playing an ODI. Probably not as great if you're playing a T20I, but such is the nature of the beast. And of course, there are going to be plenty of question marks over Kane's approach because, in the middle orders, things did, take off for New Zealand considerably. But that was thanks only to Glenn Phillips, who scored a 25-ball half century, ended the match at 62 of 36 balls. And by the time he was actually dismissed by Sam Curran, that was the final nail in the coffin for the New Zealanders. However, what had been problematic was that no one could really match Phillips's intensity, his intent, and the volume of runs he got. Williamson got 40, but it took him 40 balls to get there. Neesham only managed, 1-4, was dismissed for 6 after that. Daryl Mitchell only managed 3. Mitch Santner played a valuable, or you can't even call it that, but a decent cameo at the end, scored 16 of 10 balls, but didn't really matter much because once Glenn Phillips was dismissed by Sam Curran, and by the way, big shout out to Chris Jordan, he took 2 catches coming on as a substitute, both at the boundary, high pressure catches, managed to nail them quite easily. At the end of the day, by the time it reached the final over, when England had 26 runs to defend and Sam Curran bowling the final over, you knew New Zealand had little to no hope of actually overhauling that. Too many runs up against a bowler who's mastered bowling at the death in this particular format. Now, the qualification scenarios is in fact, it's pretty simple for most of the teams because if you look at the points table as things stand, New Zealand and England are of course the favourites because they currently sit first and second respectively in Group 1 of the Super 12s. However, don't forget that right now as things stand, there's only really been one team who've technically been knocked out of the tournament, and that is of course Afghanistan. So in that sense, it is actually advantage for the top 2 teams. As I said, New Zealand, England, they have, and New Zealand, by the way, thanks to their thumping win over Australia, even though they've lost this particular match, it hasn't really impacted their net run rate all that much. They still have the best net run rate in this particular group by some margin. It's plus 2.23. England are at plus 0.457. Australia and Sri Lanka, by the way, would be the other 2 teams who could actually realistically make a run of qualifying for the semi-finals. Both have negative net run rates. Australia are at minus 0.304. Sri Lanka are at minus 0.457. So as Nagarjun Devata is pointing out, Sri Lanka versus England will in fact be a virtual knockout. That's correct, because I think both of these teams, whichever of these teams wins, would be in a better place to displace Australia. Harsh Khatri says, I feel New Zealand and Oz will go through unless England smash SL, which is not going to be easy. I get your point, but I don't think Australia smashing Afghanistan is in the, it's on the cards either. Afghanistan might not have won any games during this tournament, but they're not pushovers. They're not someone who's going to just hold over for the Aussies, although I get your point. Australia would be favourite in that match in home conditions. But again, I think for Australia, it'll be a minor miracle for them to qualify if England can beat Sri Lanka. Because again, England don't need a big win against Sri Lanka because they're already at plus 5.47. Australia, on the other hand, at minus 0.34. So that's a lot of gap to cover. So if England can actually get even a decent win against, the against Sri Lanka, if I'm not wrong, then I think it'll be a pretty easy thing for them. Yes, Harsh, I know that their batting is pretty ordinary. I'm not denying that. But they do tend to have this tendency of sticking around and not giving things away too easily. So they might not win, but they're not going to make it too easy on the other team either. And Australia need a comprehensive win. Remember, it looked like that comprehensive win would be coming against Ireland, if not for Lockie Tucker's heroics. But I wouldn't, of course, bank on Afghanistan doing something similar, but I don't think Australia are going to be thrashing them easily either. Anyway, I'll be doing another video later on in the day, of course, on, the qualifying scenarios for all these teams. Remember, technically, as things stand, Afghanistan are the only team who've been knocked out. So every other team in that group has a chance. But, of course, you'd fancy maybe the top 4 teams. Ireland have a very, very outside chance. Not only are they just on 3 points, but their net run rate's also minus 1.544. So the favourites for now, obviously, if you ask me, of course, are the top 3 teams. Sri Lanka also do have an outside chance if they can get that win over England. But again, net run rate might just be an issue for them in that regard. But we'll see what exactly happens as things stand. Thanks in no small part to a few rain interruptions. Group 1 of the Super 12s is headed for an absolutely absolute photo finish. Any of these teams can make it, and I, for one, am definitely going to be very excited to actually get to these matches, the final days, and see who exactly gets where. But, of course, that's going to be for another time. There's lots more in the World Cup still to come. Don't forget, tomorrow you'll be having a big match, India versus Bangladesh. We'll be bringing you coverage from that all day, as well as some other stuff. So join us for that. Right now, I'm taking your leave, but thank you all so much for joining us. As always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave us a comment, and, of course, tap that bell icon. Then go ahead and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Last but not least, download the AajTak app. Thank you all for joining us, as always, and goodbye for now.